Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel and get notifications whenever a new video is uploaded just by clicking that notifications button. Let's talk boxing. Let's talk about Jarrell Miller. According to the Boxing Voice, he has agreed to VADA protocol, VADA testing. So when his ban is over and he's ready to return to the sport, he will be undergoing more stringent drugs testing. Obviously, he's failed twice in the past. He was due to fight Anthony Joshua, as I'm sure you're all aware. He failed a couple of drugs tests and was put on the back burner, basically. And Andy Ruiz stepped in, and the rest, as they say, is history. This is a guy with 20 knockout wins out of his 23 fights. He has had one draw early in his career against a tricky Joey DeVaco. But since then, he's come on heaps and bounds. He's stopped the likes of Marius Vac, which is no mean feat. Gerald Washington. He's also stopped, past his best, albeit washed up, really, Thomas Adamek, but he stopped him too. Bogdan Dinu was undefeated, 18-0. He stopped him. He beat Johan Duab on points. So he beat a bunch of C-level guys in pretty convincing fashion. And he was ready to jump up to take on that A-level guy in Anthony Joshua. The question is now, without the drugs to back him up, how is he going to feel mentally going into these fights? What effects is it going to have on him? Also, physically, what effects is it going to have on him? Johnny Nelson often says drugs don't make a guy a better fighter. Well, if that was the case, they wouldn't take performance-enhancing drugs, because although it can't improve your technique, it can't improve your boxing IQ, your heart, certain things it can't improve, it can improve certain physical attributes. It can improve your strength, your power. It can improve your stamina, your speed. Okay, it can improve recovery rate. It can improve how you trim down to make weight. Obviously, that's a little bit more relevant to lower divisions. It can improve things like recovery rate during training, so that you can get more training hours in, and so on and so forth. So mentally, not having that to back you up is bound to affect you if you felt like a need to rely on it. Now, that's not to say that there are no other dirty fighters in the sport of boxing, because WADA themselves, the World Anti-Doping Agency, admit to only catching 2% of drugs cheats. So when you consider how many drugs cheats are out there that have been caught, now take into account how many more there would be out there if only 2% are caught, well, now you're talking about, almost all of the fighters you can name being drugs cheats, statistically speaking. So it wouldn't surprise me if cheating's rife, and even when it comes to legal substances, there are a lot of athletes that take substances that are legal but are performance enhancing. Take the whole thing with Maria Sharapova, for instance. She was taking clenbuterol, and it was a known thing. It was out there. And the only reason she got done for cheating is because she didn't read the email that said from X date it will now be illegal, from March, whatever it was. I think March was in March, but she was told from this date forth you have to stop taking this substance. Not you, just everybody. She didn't open the email. She carried on taking the substance. In other words, from say the day before that ban started, she would have been cheating because she was taking a legal substance. So this stuff's common in the sport. Okay, it's more to do with pharmacists who are employed by athletes always trying to stay a step ahead of the testers who are looking to test specific substances, and they're looking to give you certain things which will boost your athletic performance. Now, with that in mind, there will be other athletes that will also be on things. But with Jarrell Miller, the fact that there'll be more stringent testing, it'll be a lot harder for him to get away with what he's been trying to get away with, particularly if he's failed twice. That would suggest he's not exactly a professional at cycling off of drugs and being able to trick the testers. So it's unlikely that he'd take a massive risk again, I'd have thought, because if he did, it could really spell the end of his career. But if he's back now and he's not taking these drugs, the fact that he felt like he had to rely on them in the past, how will it affect him mentally? Also physically, like I said, is he going to be able to fight that pressure fighting style? This was a very big man who would be a size guy, essentially, in the heavyweight division. He'd rely on size to walk down heavyweights, apply incessant pressure on them. He was renowned, like I said, for his durability. 20 knockout wins out of 23 victories. Only that one draw. Never been stopped, obviously, because he's undefeated. He was a pro kickboxer before that. He was 2-2, but even in those 2 defeats, he wasn't stopped. He even had a Muay Thai fight, which he won. So he's never been stopped as far as we know. The only story of him being essentially stopped, hurt, knocked out, was in sparring against Deontay Wilder. Now, you have to be careful about believing sparring rumours, but this is one I do believe, based on the fact that Deontay Wilder said to one of the guys in the Boxing Voice in an interview, he said, "You were there, you saw what happened to Jarrell Miller. He was out cold, he had to go to the hospital." And the interviewer was just sort of semi-smiling, nodding his head. At no point did he say, oh, wait, I wasn't there, I didn't see that, or I don't know what you're talking about. He seemed to be confirming what Deontay Wilder was saying, you were there sort of thing. Now, there's no shame into getting knocked out by Deontay Wilder, especially when you fight like Jarrell Miller with a high guard, walking forward, trying to essentially absorb punishment to get your own punishment off, to apply pressure in order to tire a guy out before you go to work. When you're going to apply that sort of foot pressure and that consistent movement forward, you're going to absorb a lot of shots. And, Gerald Washington was having a lot of success, but he got worn down. So this is what tends to happen against guys like, against Jarrell Miller. Now, with Deontay Wilder, you can't afford to do that. You can't afford to take shots that much and hoping he gasses. You just can't. You're not going to walk through that power. So Deontay Wilder aside, how does he fare against the rest of the heavyweight division? Is this guy still going to be the same guy physically? Is he still going to be able to do the things he used to do? And if so, do you expect him to apply the sort of pressure he used to apply? Or will carrying all that extra weight now mean that he doesn't recover as quickly? He does get more out of breath. He's not going to be as physically imposing and powerful, perhaps in strength, leaning on a guy or punching a guy, the power he produces. Is he going to be the same fighter? And if so, and he is going to be somebody who you're going to take seriously in the heavyweight division, how will it be in terms of the way you view him? And this is going to sort of move on to another element that's been going on at the moment, whereby a couple of weeks ago, there was a bit of controversy that occurred in the Hall of Fame voting. So obviously there has been a lot of focus on the fact that Miguel Cotto wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. But another one that caused a bit of controversy in the United States was James Toney. Now, James Toney obviously is, a bit of a cult figure, an unbelievably skilled middleweight, wonderful fighter. Towards the end of his career, he obviously failed a couple of drugs tests. I believe it was a couple, and it was at least 2. And Dan Raphael explained to Stephen Edwards, who was a trainer who was asking, an American trainer who's been asking, why would you leave James Toney out? Dan Raphael said, look, I could never vote for anybody in the Hall of Fame who's failed a drugs test twice. And Stephen Edwards was basically saying, I hope we see some consistency when it comes to this sort of thing. And there were other fans that were jumped on the thread and they were saying, yeah, let's see what happens with Canelo when his career's said and done, and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, Canelo hasn't failed twice, he's failed once. But what they were saying, these fans, is that when it came to James Toney, some of them were saying, you have to remember that when he failed his test, it was in the latter part of his career, after he'd achieved a Hall of Fame status career. And they were implying that you shouldn't take away the credit and stigmatize the early part of his career where he would have been testing clean compared to the latter part of his career where he would have been cheating. Now, cynics would say, well, how do you know he wasn't cheating and just getting away with it early in his career? Lance Armstrong went a whole career without cheating. WADA admit that they only catch 2% of drugs cheats, like I've said. So, think about how many fighters have failed drugs tests and how many more there would be that are cheating if WADA are admitting they're only catching 2% of drugs cheats. So where do you draw the line with all this? Will you always stigmatize Jerrell Miller? Will he ever win you over again? Let's say he's going through these stringent drugs tests, as we are being told with VADA, and he passes, and he comes back and he wins 2 or 3 big fights. Are you going to be the sort of guy that's banging the drum to say, you know what, I want to see this guy get a title shot now. He's earned it now. He's clean. He's earned it. He's paid his dues, into society, almost like a prison sentence that he served. Now he's back. Now we have to take him seriously. Or are you always going to say, you know what, this guy's always a drugs cheat to me. I don't want him anywhere near boxing anymore. And if so, how consistent are you, or are you going to want to be with other fighters going forward? Are you always going to use this line? And is it 1, failed drugs test? 2, what's the limit before you say, you know what, I never want to see this guy again in the sport of boxing? Let me know. I wish you all a very happy new year. I hope it's a wonderful 2021. I wish I could be optimistic that it will be, but unless people wake up to what's going on and really push back against tyranny, it's the only way I can put it. I'm fearful that 2021 will be even worse than 2020. But nonetheless, I wish you all happiness and health, wealth and love, and hope it's a wonderful year for you. God bless everybody. Thank you for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care.